Hello, everybody. Hi.
Yeah,
Welcome
hi.
to this masterclass on kickstarting career and growth opportunities with fintech startups.
Yeah, hi. Hi,
Hello.
everybody.
Hi,
Hi,
Pratish.
Pratish.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah. So we'll get started now. So
Yeah, people will keep on joining, so we can
the
start.
first 5 minutes of a masterclass, we have people coming in, and so that's all right. All right. So people can post their questions in the chat box as we go along. This is going to be an interactive session. There are not a lot of PPTs. We'll switch off the PPTs very soon, and it will just be Prateek and me and you having a conversation about fintech startups. So to get started about this, let me first of all welcome Pratish. Okay, Pratish is a CEO. Is the CEO and co-founder of OneFin. OneFin is a YC-funded startup. He's an alum of Goldman Sachs, and he comes with a 10 plus years of experience in finance. So, uh, Pratish, welcome to this masterclass.
Yeah, great to have to join this masterclass, and I look forward to interacting with all of you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Right. Yes, welcome once again. To talk about me, I'm Sudhanshu. I'm the co-founder of Antwalk. Antwalk is an education startup, and we work at bridging the industry academia gap. What we see is that despite coming from the best schools and colleges across the world, we realize that when you get into a professional setup, there is that's a very different world altogether. That is not something that your academic education prepares you for. And that is where we bring industry experts from all the different domains, and they come and share their knowledge, which they have painstakingly accumulated by having spent years in their domains, right? So today we have Pratish, who will share his expertise, his knowledge, both as a finance professional and also as a startup founder and CEO. What are the challenges he faces? And what we'll specifically talk about is the career in fintech. you know so what we'll talk about is what are the different, we'll in general talk about the fintech landscape. We'll talk about different roles in a fintech. People associate fintech majorly with finance, but there are a lot of roles in fintech that are very, very important to the entire business. We'll understand how important is be understanding finance in fintech. All right. And we'll learn and know from Pratish what he looks forward when he hires people. Okay. And of we'll talk about some entry levels packages and other things, but we majorly will know. So to give you a setting about why we are talking about this, why should we talk about fintech? India is a fintech superpower. We have It is one of the fastest growing fintech markets in the world, and there are close to 2000 plus fintech startups in India, and which have majorly come up in the last 5 years. The current fintech market is close to $30 billion, and it will go to $84 billion with a CAGR of 22%. In the last year alone, close to 10 billion plus funding has happened in the fintech space, right? So it is, even when our prime minister was talking from Lal Killa, he spoke about the growing startup ecosystem in India. And fintech after e-commerce is the biggest domain if we talk about the startup ecosystem. If you talk about the e-commerce, where there are a lot of players, then fintech is the second. Then we have edtech, we have SaaS platforms, there are multiple things, right? So it is a space which is very, very exciting. It is in a phase, I would say it is getting heated up. It is not yet stagnated. It is bound to grow for the next 5 to 10 years. It's a brilliant domain to make your career in. And the fintech landscape. So I will possibly switch off the uh, uh, the slideshow. And Pratish, So first is, people with fintech, what are the different types of companies? What are the different, domains the fintech companies are creating their impact in? And this is from where we can possibly start the conversation. Pratish?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So, yeah, we can start with that. Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Sudhanshu,
Okay.
you can pin Pratish for everyone. So that
That is what I'm trying to do. I will do that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so as you know, I fully agree, Sudhanshu, with what you just said. Fintech is one of the hottest segments in India today. It's a very it's a space where I feel that there's a lot of scope for growth, and there is already over the last 4-5 years there have been a lot of very innovative startups which have come across various different segments. So I'll kind of come to that quickly in a bit. But moving forward also, like, I definitely am a big believer in this space, having been overall in the financial services space over the last 10 odd years. I have seen and especially in the startup world in the last 5 to 6 years, like, I've been fortunate to see the evolution of a lot of different startups and different types of business models and problem statements that people are solving. And I think that the future is definitely very bright in this space, and there's a lot of push from the government side as well.
Yeah.
In allowing new technology to be kind of created, co-created, and so on. Like UPI is a very a simple but very powerful example of that. Today, I remember like 7-8 years back, like transactions that the way in which we used to do versus now, there is like almost like a 10x difference in terms of the ease of actually doing online payments and so on and so forth. So coming back to your question, there are a lot of different spaces within the fintech space in India, where different startups are coming up. So one is obviously payments. There are several different very scaled up startups in this space. Of course, all you guys might be aware about Paytm, PhonePe, these kind of companies. So these startups are trying to help people. It can be B2B payments or it can be B2C payments. So Paytm and PhonePe are a little bit more example of a B2C type of payment company, where they are trying to help people do one-on-one payments. I am an individual, Sudhanshu is another individual, and I want to send money to him or receive money from him. These guys provide an application to kind of do that. Similarly, there are some startups in the B2B payments space, right? So a lot of the venture capital, the funding which has been raised over the last 5 or 8 years has gone into this space, which is the payments space, and definitely people are doing a lot of innovative stuff over there. The other space, I would say, where there is a lot of spotlight has been around lending. So as Sudhanshu mentioned early on, like if you guys recall, like 5 or 8 years back, like e-commerce was the was the hot thing. It still is, and there is still a lot of opportunity in that space. But generally, if you see in any country, like the evolution of internet economy evolves, where first you would generally have like physical commerce which is happening, then that goes online, and that's how e-commerce is born. Then comes payments, where when people are buying and selling stuff online, they need to be able to make payments, right? And that's how payments industry is born, online payments industry is born. And then comes credit or lending, where once you are actually able to make payments, you are creating a transaction log of like what kind of buying or selling you are doing, and basis of that data as well as other relevant data that is there, you can actually estimate the income potential of a particular individual, the how much spending he or she is doing, and on the basis of that you can actually provide them financing to help them either grow their business or make new purchases and so on and so forth. So that is the second vertical, which is, lending, where, a lot of, promising startups have come up. The third space is around, what is called as wealth tech, or investments or savings, where, there are a lot of startups these days, especially in the last 3-4 years, where which are, making it much easier for people to, if they have, extra savings or, extra income, which is just lying idle in their bank account, they can actually invest in the public markets, as an example, like, on the stock exchange, like the National Stock Exchange or Bombay Stock Exchange and so on. So there are a lot of, innovative startups which have come over there, where they are providing some kind of digital interface, like a mobile application or a website through which the customer can sign up, and they can track the market, how it is performing. Similarly, they can make investments, and there, you can even do fractional investments. If you have only 100 rupees you want to invest, you can go as low as like 10 rupees or 100 rupees investment. You don't have to put in a huge amount of money into kind of making these investments. So by virtue of it becoming like a digital type of experience, the cost of actually, processing and managing these investments actually comes down significantly, which allows people to, make investments with much shorter amounts, and that actually democratizes the, access to investments for all kinds of people. So I remember, my parents' generation, I'm sure, Sudhanshu or Sumit, any of you guys, like, your parents' generation, for them, it was like investing in the stock market was, like a no, right? Like, or people did not really know at that time, like what this is. Whereas now, the young generation, folks like us, especially I think through the lockdown a little bit more, people have, started putting like 5 or 10% of their overall savings that is there, investing it for, future purposes. So that's why investing it in different stocks and so on and so on. So that is, what is called as wealth tech, right? Then the third space, the fourth space is around insurance, where again, like India historically, it's because it is a developing economy, insurance is something where people it's like an afterthought, right? Like people don't really think, okay, something bad will happen to me, and so that's why I should buy protection against that, which is essentially what insurance is, right? If you fall ill, you have to go to a hospital. The hospital bill is, something very costly. Correct. And that can be significantly costly for you to, take care of those medical expenses. These are, a very simple example of like where you can buy insurance. And so tomorrow, if there is a big bill that, hospital gives you, you can, through an insurance plan, some of those costs can actually get covered. Awareness around insurance, I would say, especially unfortunately because of this entire COVID scenario over the last 1.5 to 2 years, I think has gone up significantly. And that, coupled with a lot of innovative startups coming up and again offering like a digital experience in terms of buying insurance and so on, has helped in gradually increasing the insurance penetration in the country. There are a lot of very interesting startups in that space. And the fifth one, which I think is worth mentioning over here, especially in the last 2-3 years, is crypto, where there are marketplaces which have come up, which allow you to buy or sell cryptocurrencies. I'm personally not at all an expert in that, so I don't think I can add a lot of context over there. But definitely people not just in big cities, but even in smaller towns and so on, are, because of internet penetration and so on, are today able to buy and sell cryptocurrencies and kind of trade in that. So these are some of the different types of fintech companies that are there. I'll just take 2 more minutes and quickly try to cover the types of the types of business models that are there, if you will. So I first covered the types of fintech companies that are there, the different verticals.
Yeah.
I'll quickly cover the types of business models that are there. So one business model is an aggregator type of business model. You guys might have heard of this company called Bank Bazaar or Policy Bazaar. Oftentimes you might have seen some advertisements on TV or something like that. So what these companies do, like Policy Bazaar is an example, it's an insurance aggregator where what it does is, if you want to buy insurance, you go on their website, and they have partnered with 10 insurance companies in the backend. And then you can pick and choose which kind of insurance you want to buy. Obviously, the benefit of that is under one website or one application, you're able to get a lot of choice, and then you can decide which way you want to go. So that is an aggregator type of model where across various sectors, like some of the sectors which I mentioned, a lot of different types of aggregators have come up. Bank Bazaar is an example of a lending aggregator where they partner with various different banks, and you can apply for a loan, and then the right bank will approve a loan for you, and so on and so forth. The other business model is a platform business model. There are several different companies in this space. Essentially, what a platform does is it is more often like a one-to-one relationship where you can, for particular type of product, you can go on that platform and you can buy the service that you're looking for. But then the platform will be an expert in the or try to do the best that they can in terms of the value proposition that they are offering to you. So an example of this would be a company like Zest Money. Some of you guys might have heard of it. You guys might have also seen it on the checkout pages of some of your favorite e-commerce companies like Flipkart or Amazon, and so on and so forth. So
which one, Pratish? Which company was it?
I mentioned, I just mentioned Zest Money.
Zest Money, yeah.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So that is a company which gives you an option to, if you're going on any e-commerce company and you want to buy, let's say, a smartphone, then this company basically gives you the option to apply for a loan, and then if you're approved, then you can basically get the financing and you can buy the product that is there. Similarly, there is a company called Propelled, which is in the education lending space, which is again a platform. They themselves are not doing the lending, right? They offer a facility where if you go on any education edtech company or any college or university or something, and you want to upskill yourself or do a degree or a course, they partner with different educational institute, and you can apply for financing over there. And if you're approved, then they will, through their lending partners, they will give you the financing. So these are some examples of platform business model. Similarly, the third type of business model is full stack, right? So the two companies which I just mentioned, most of the lending that they do is not from their own balance sheet, right? It's a platform, whereas a full stack model would be where the company does the sourcing of the customer as well as the servicing of the customer end to end, including, for example, if it's a lending type of use case, then putting that balance sheet on the table. So they themselves are actually doing the lending, right?
Got it.
Similarly, they themselves might be actually providing the insurance. So there is a a well-known company in the ecosystem called Digit. Some of you guys might have heard of it. They are like a full stack insurance company where they are not just aggregating customer and sending it to an insurance company. They themselves are actually providing the insurance, right? So they are taking that balance sheet exposure. Similarly, there is a company called, in the lending space, there is a company called Capital Float, which provides loans to small businesses, right? So there they actually provide the loans. It is their money that they are lending, right? So that is an example of a full stack type of lending model. And then there are the fourth type of business model which I can mention is the kind of business that I am actually running, which is OneFin, which is an infrastructure type of company So there are a few such companies which have come up in the last 2-3 years, where essentially for any kind of lending or payments activity, if any company has a requirement to build the technology for it, or build the tools that are required to actually enable lending on their platform, or to enable digital payments or collections on their platform, then we provide them the technology infrastructure or the APIs to actually empower them to do that. The advantage of that is you don't have to build everything from scratch. You can basically rent it out from somebody like me. And yes, of course, I'll charge a fee for that, and so on and so forth. So there are a few companies like this which are basically providing the infrastructure to power payments and credit or lending type of use cases. So that is another type of business model that is there. Okay. So I hope this gives you guys a good idea about the types of fintech companies and the types of business models that are there.
Yeah, so, absolutely, Pradesh. This is very interesting the way you talked about the evolution of fintech, because first is it started with the point of convenience. If I have to purchase something online, I need to make a payment. So first use case was from the point of view of checkout, whether on Flipkart when they started, right? Yes. So companies started focusing on payment. As soon as the customer became used to it, then companies told that why don't you also lend money from us, and then yes, people become okay, ठीक है, कोई तो पैसा दे रहा है मेरे को online, let me take that money. Once people became confident with the lending and ecosystem, then they, just like you have said, the Gen Z, the new generation, they started investing small amount. And, yes, the barrier to start, barrier to kickstart your journey, they completely revolutionized it. I remember, way back in 2014 or 15, I opened my account with Zerodha, and I had a call with the customer care. The customer care told me that I asked them what's the fees. He told, sir, it is 0.2% or 20 rupees, whichever is lower. Yeah. And I was like, ऐसा तो नहीं होता यार, whichever is higher होता है हमेशा. You are saying something new, that you will not charge anything, you will just charge 20 rupees, that too for trading. If yeah, I'll take anything for delivery, it is free. It is completely free of cost. So this kind of a barrier of entry, the disruption in the investment was done by the investment, the startups, and then obviously the insurance and the newest product crypto. So interesting evolution how fintech industry over the period of time has understood the need of the person, understood the persona and their capability, what exactly they are capable and okay to experiment with, and ultimately that's how it is evolving. Very thanks Pratish, it's very interesting the way you put it.
Yeah. Sure. Talking about journeys, Pratish, you have 10 plus years of journey in the domain of finance. Yes. 2.5 years you've dedicated to fintech space. So talk about your journey in this space, and why is it that you chose to invest your time and effort in that direction? Sure.
So yeah, my education was actually in like pure and applied mathematics, right? So when I actually went to college, I had thought that I would get into academia and research, like hardcore math essentially is how I went to college and decided to study mathematics. But as I went through that journey, I remember it was the 2008 financial crisis which happened in the US, and then it had like a global impact and all that. So I remember I was in college at that time, and I used to really get fascinated kind of reading about all the different things which are happening in the economic sphere or the financial markets world over, and that is something which I got very interested in. So it just so happened that over time I kind of realized that there's definitely a lot of application of mathematics to financial services, right? And so when I graduated from college, I decided to, instead of going in the direction of getting into academia, I decided to get into finance. And I worked at a few different companies. So for example, Goldman Sachs was one of the companies, which is an investment bank. And similarly, I also worked at a company called Societe Generale, which is also an investment bank. It's a French investment bank.
Mm-hmm.
What I saw over there was real world applications of a lot of concepts which I had learned in college, especially around applied mathematics. I did my master's in applied math as well, where I actually we used to build different types of quantitative models to understand the different types of financial risk that the company is taking when
Mm-hmm.
it is doing different types of investments in different markets across the world. So our job was, as a professional over there, my job was to build quantitative models, mathematical models, understand how much risk the company is taking in actual dollar value, right, or rupee value, and make sure that that risk doesn't kind of blow up and company doesn't get into trouble or something like that. So we did, me and my co-founders, at OneFin, like we all essentially, used to do that kind of work. And it was, interesting work for sure. But as we, spent more and more time in that space, and we were in India, we also were observing, this was around 2015 types. We used to observe a lot of policy changes which the government itself was trying to push. You guys might remember the entire demonetization exercise. Similarly, the rollout of GST, a lot of stuff around KYC, digitization of KYC. So I remember, almost 8 or 10 years back, if you had to open a bank account, you have to physically go to a branch and submit physical papers in order to actually open a bank account. Same with loans and investments and everything basically, right? And then over like the last 10-15 years, like the efforts that various different governments have put around creating a central database like Aadhaar database and so on, and making the validation of your KYC in a completely digital manner. That is something which we felt that can actually help in penetrating a lot of the financial services products which are there to a much wider audience. Because the reality is that in India, like if you look at all the banks combined, right, like all the small, big banks, private banks, public banks, and so on, India is such a huge country, and even if you take all the physical bank branches that the banks have, they will not be able to cover the reach of like where all people are staying across the country, right? So because just a simple thing as that can actually exclude you from the formal financial ecosystem. And so we felt that these kind of policies which several different governments are trying to push for is something which will help in the digitization of financial services in India. And we felt that it would be a very good opportunity for us to try to contribute or try to build some new products in this space. And so even though at my previous job, like at Goldman, like we actually did not used to do anything directly relevant to India. We were just working in India, but like most of the markets that we were dealing with were Western markets and like Eastern markets and so on. So we felt that this was a good opportunity, and so that's how we decided to kind of leave those well-paying jobs and try to build a startup of our own. And that's how we started this, like, and that's how my startup journey has come about. So yeah, like that's been my journey, and that's why there's a lot of really innovative stuff which is happening in the financial services space as we speak in India, and many things are in the pipeline. Everybody is thinking out of the box and trying to build new innovative products. So I'm very optimistic about like what this space holds in India over the next 5 to 10 years. So yeah.
So all the best, your journey and the fintech space in general. I see it grow, and our interests are also aligned to that. So coming to you as a startup founder, okay,
Yeah.
of a fintech startup. So what are the different roles that you see are critical to your functioning? So people think fintech is all about finance, but how do you look at it?
Yeah, so sure. So, see, fintech is basically fin and tech, right?
Yeah.
So part of it is finance and part of it is technology. It's in the name itself,
Yes.
right? There are a lot of different roles, within the fintech or financial services space, which are, available out there. So I would definitely, say that it is not just that only if you have a finance background, then you can, go and join like a fintech startup or something like that. I have personally seen recruited, I have seen in other companies, peer companies and so on, people from all different kinds of, backgrounds, making a career and doing well in various different fintech startups. I'll give a quick overview about the different types of, roles that I have seen. I think it will be a little bit more, tailored towards credit or payments type of, startups, because that is where I have spent most of my time. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, like there are different other, industry within fintech, like crypto, insurance, and so on. But I'll try to stick a little bit more towards payments and credit. So one is obviously, software engineering or technology, right? In a lot of these, lending or payments related startups, you're dealing with huge amounts of data, right? So if you're talking about a payments startup, there'll be, tens of lakhs of daily transactions which are happening on your platform. Similarly, if you're talking about lending, you might be collecting, in order to decide which customer to approve the loan for. Let's say 100 customers are applying for a loan, you would approve loan for say 15 or 20 customers. So there you are collecting a lot of data about the customer. So for example, their credit history data, their banking data, their employment data, if it's a salaried type of loan case and so on, or if it's a self-employed customer, then GST data, and so on and so forth. So as I mentioned in one of the earlier points that we covered, because there is a lot of digitalization which is happening across the entire economy, there's a lot of digital information which is now available, which is very valuable, based on which you can make good decisions, whether from a lending point of view, whether to give a loan to somebody or not to give it, and whether they're likely to default or not, and so on. Yeah. So there, essentially there's a lot of data that you're collecting from various different sources. So because of this, there are broadly two types of roles that you can make your career in. One is like a machine learning or a data scientist type of role, where your job will be primarily around building machine learning models to use this data, and on the basis of that make decisions, like credit underwriting decisions, and so on and so forth, as I mentioned. And the other is core software data, where you might be involved in either building the front end architecture, like building either the mobile web application, or similarly building the like a website, or embedding your loan application into a third party website, and so on and so forth. So there you would be doing a lot of front end work, right? So you'll be like a front end engineer. And similarly, there is back end engineer type of roles, where you would be building the core back end infrastructure to power these payments or loans, right? So you need a lot of software to manage the requests which are coming in, to store the data, to do analytics around it, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the roles with the engineering space that are there. Of course, you'll join as a software engineer or a senior software engineer and so on. But as your career progresses, you can become head of engineering or the CTO of a company, or you yourself actually start your own startup, like in the fintech space and so on. So that is one role. The other is around
Sumit, did you lose Pratish? Yeah, I think we lost Pratish.
Yeah, I think he'll be joining again. I'll check.
Okay, no problems. So till the time, you guys can see my screen, right? You guys, I hold on. So yes, so as Pratish was saying, there are a lot of tech roles that are there. Definitely, and there is a lot of there is some understanding of finance, though not a lot, because as things get more automated, things get more digitalized. A lot of finance, the underwriting, the modeling aspect is getting digitalized as well. So Pratish is back. Okay, so hi Pratish.
Yeah, hi Sudhanshu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. I think it's just my connection just we missed it. So I think I was at the finance point,
Yes.
right? So there, like finance or treasury type of roles where you would be working essentially on managing the entire finances of the company, especially if, for example, if you're a lending startup, right? Your job would be to ensure that like how much lending is happening, what kind of interest is being charged, how are the repayments happening, the accounting of it, the bookkeeping of it, and so on and so forth. Similarly, part of the role will be around fundraising as well, because if you're a lending startup, then you would be raising funds to be able to lend forward to the customers. So a lot of that work is around that also. Coming to sales, there yeah. So coming to sales, like there the responsibilities will be around going and finding new business prospects, and doing partnerships and so on and so forth. There's a lot of stuff around product as well, as I mentioned earlier on. A lot of opportunities around being a good product manager in good fast growing startups. Today there are a lot of very interesting new lending, payments, insurance products which are getting created in the industry. So this is a good opportunity if somebody wants to make a career in in product management and so on. So if you join an early stage startup which is doing some very new innovative products, you can actually learn a lot about the not just the product management aspect of things, but the core finance business itself, right? So that is definitely something where I've seen a lot of good talented people go and work for. And there are other stuff like marketing, where you guys might have seen, like there are few fintech apps in the market, like Cred is an example, or Zerodha is an example, or Upstocks is there, or Grow is there, various different Policy Bazaar, all these companies, they do a lot of marketing to attract customers to the products that they are doing. So they do a lot of digital marketing, right? And there, like of course, having been in this space for the last 4 or 5 years, I think there is a science to that, right? And I know that Antwork team has been doing masterclass sessions around that as well. So if you want to make a career in marketing, there's definitely a lot of opportunity especially in the B2C fintech space, right? Yeah. Where you can build a lot of good marketing skills, and even the stuff that you have learned, you can actually experiment with that in a real world scenario. So these are some of the roles which are there. I'll quickly go over credit and operations also, again because it's a lending type of use case. People who have have either done a quantitative education, or have done an MBA, or any kind of quantitative type of role that education that they have done. If they are analytically good, you can always go and join in any of these startups as on the credit side as a credit manager and so on. There your job will typically be to look at the data that is being captured from the customer, and approve or decline the loan applications and so on and so forth. there are, what I've seen is there are two types of models. Like it can be fully automated, or it will be, you know, semi-manual type of process. So partly it is decided by the machine learning models, and partly there is a human intervention, right? But definitely, you know, a lot of interesting work which is happening in that space also. In fact, like if you look at, you know, the big, you know, banks or financial institutions in the country, more often than not, the senior management generally comes from a, you know, credit type of background, because that is actually very core to a lending or a, you know, financial core, yeah, like a banking type of business. So yeah, these are some of the roles.
Okay.
Nice,
So
nice.
of course we discussed different roles. So coming to hiring for your company, right?
Yeah.
So there are some tech skills. There are, you know, like some people look for some intrinsics. What exactly do you look for in people when you hire for your company?
Sure. So there are a couple of things. See, first of all, it depends a little bit from role to role. But you know what I can, you know, firstly, as a young startup ourselves, and you know, us founders are also a little bit not that young. I wish I was much younger, but
Yeah.
but a little bit on the younger side. I generally prefer, you know, freshers a little bit, because the advantage over there is that they don't have to unlearn what they might have learned at, you know, some other place, right? So they're raw. So, you know, if we can actually work with them closely, and you know, whatever skills we feel are the right skills that they should learn, we can actually, you know, share with them, right, and help them, you know, kind of grow their career. So my preference is a little bit towards, you know, the fresher side, having worked with people who are more experienced and who are complete freshers. You know, more often than not, I've generally seen that, you know, people who are freshers are much faster in adapting, or you know, learning some, you know, new skills that are there. So that is number one. Number two, of course, you know, technical skills. Like for the role that is being offered, like we as a company, like definitely will have, you know, various, you know, several different rounds. We try to make sure that we will have one-on-one conversations with the candidate and the, you know, team member in our organization. So at least, you know, 4 or 5 team members will actually talk to the candidate. It's an opportunity for them also to know about what the company is doing, and vice versa, for us to know. And so there, you know, we will also, you know, generally what we try to do is we also give them assignments. So those can be written assignments, or if it's like an engineering type of role, then, you know, like a you know, like a coding assignment and so on, through which, you know, we have a systematic process around that, which we figure out like who are, you know, good candidates and so on. The third thing is also, you know, around culture fit. So most startups, you know, good startup, like an early stage startup, would be like a fast growing environment, right? So it is not as, so I have worked in a, you know, big organization. You know, I know Sudhanshu, Sumit, you guys have also worked in a big organization, right? And so generally, you know, the cultural thing which I have seen is, if you're in a big organization, then a lot of things are already figured out, right? So essentially it is like you have to do what you are told, in a sense, right? Whereas the difference with a lot of startups is that a lot of things you actually have to come up, and you have to solve, you know, a lot of problems from literally first principles basis, right? So that is something which, you know, is not always something which everybody is comfortable with. It's obviously, you know, everybody's personal choice, but what we like to do is, you know, we try to see if the candidate is will be able to work in a, you know, fast-paced environment. It's essentially like, you know, you know, every day, you know, new problems are coming up, but are they able to absorb things fast and, you know, act on that? It is completely okay not to know something, right? But generally, I think a good indicator of whether something is going to succeed or not is, you know, what is the rate of learning that is there, right? Not the absolute amount of knowledge that you have at a given point in time, right? So that is something which I feel is very important, and something that we try to gauge when we try to interview candidates. These are, you know, some 3 or 4 things that we definitely look for while interviewing candidates.
Interesting, Pratish, because you prefer freshers, that is very interesting. Any particular pedigree you also look for in freshers, or you are okay with, some other intrinsics? How you identify freshers for this kind of
definitely. So we don't necessarily, always go after, the fancy, job title or the fancy college or something like that, right? We have a lot of, members in our team who don't come from like, the IITs or something like that. I myself am not from an IIT, right? So, uh, so, um, um, like, we have more often than not, we have seen that, people who are from, other colleges also are, smart, and it's just that, they have not necessarily, have the right opportunity to express their creativity, right? So it is our job to, in the interview process, to engage with them in a meaningful manner, to be able to actually evaluate them, right? So and that is what, we do try to spend a little bit of time around, and we definitely, do efforts in going after, other colleges also, who are not always like the IITs or something like that, and we definitely, we get good candidates from other colleges also. So it's about, one thing on this that we also do is, like, if some particular college, if we see that, the candidates are good, then we will try to build a relationship with that college also, right? Because then we know, okay, yeah, this college has, good culture, they're training, the students well, and so there's, like, it's something which will help us over a longer period of time also. So that is certainly something which we try to do. So yeah.
And talking about post hiring inside the company, one thing that I would like to share from our perspective is, what we look for people, because startup is such a dynamic place to work, and people who eventually stick long term are people who are ready to take more accountability of their work. Right?
Yes.
So one thing that we have seen is that, things change so much. You might be doing a mini pivot, or you might be changing some strategy. How quickly can people align to your strategy? How quickly can they unlearn what they were doing, quickly align to what we are? And more people who can take ownership and absolute accountability of tasks assigned to them, right?
Correct.
So that is something that we as startup really look forward to, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's what, as I said earlier on, the rate of learning is something which is actually more important than the absolute amount of knowledge that you have at a particular point. You can be at zero also, right? Like, but if your rate of learning is fast, in 1 year, you could be at a completely different place, right? So that is actually very, very important. So we also look for that.
So one of the things that, what we talk about in our company is the P&L ownership as well. So it's not taking accountability of tasks that is assigned to you, but as you grow in an organization, and what happens, like in a startup, 2 years is equivalent to 10 years in a larger
definitely company. Absolutely.
You have to work, at ICICI Bank, to get the same kind of accountability or, responsibilities assigned to me. I would have had to work a lot of years.
Absolutely.
Here you can show that, you can own a relationship with a client. You can own the, the entire interaction. You can own the P&L ownership that we talk about, right? So if there are people who can very quickly show the responsibility and the acumen to get that is, I think, is very, very important for a startup. We look for people, one thing that as co-founders or CEO that we are, because we, in the beginning, you try to be everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And then the first thing that you start looking for is, who are the right people on whom I can start, where I can build the trust, who can be my next majors and kernels who can be in the field. So these kind of things that, people with accountability wherever you start from. And it happens, we have in our company people who have been given responsibilities that they had never been trained for. So as you were saying, that knowledge, you could be zero, it doesn't matter. I know many startups, most of the new teams that are set up. So say if you want to go on a digital marketing route, 90% of the people are kind of cross-functional who are put from a different place say that, can you handle this for some time, and if you show a spike in your performance, then of course company invests in you in a longer run.
Yes,
right?
Correct. So just one point I will add over here. So this is something which I actually learned at Goldman. Honestly, when I joined, I mean, like that was one of my first jobs out of college, and that time I used to think like, ये लोग क्या मुझे फंडे दे रहे हैं? Very frankly speaking, I used to think like that. But in the retrospect, I felt that the culture that they were trying to build in their organization over there, one of the cultural principles actually resonated a lot as I've grown in my career. So they used to say something to the effect that like put your client first, right? And so you used to always think that when you hear the word client, you always think that, oh, some customer, or it's somebody outside the organization, or somebody who is paying me like outside the organization or something like that. That is not what a client is. A client is actually anybody that you are actually engaging with on a day-to-day basis. So it can be your co-worker also, right? Like an engineering team, would be closely working with the product team, for example. So the product team is actually client of the engineering team, and vice versa, right? So if that kind of culture is built through and through, internally as well as externally, you will actually set yourself up for a reasonable probability of success as an individual as well as a company, right? So that is something which taking that ownership, right, is something which is very, very critical. That actually sets people apart as they from one against another as they kind of grow in their career. So I definitely feel that that is something which is very important.
So I would request people, if they have questions, they can put on the chat. These are the last 10-15 minutes of this session. So talking about the what a lot of young people who want to get into fintech,
Yeah,
the first thing, how do I get there?
sure.
So are there certain things that I can possibly highlight on my resume, or are certain things that I can do which can help me land a job in fintech?
Sure. So there are a couple of things, which I can cover over here. So of course, as I said, having a good education, like having studied at a good educational institute is not sufficient, right? Of course, if you have studied at a good education institute and have done well over there, that acts as a, as a basic level filter, I would say, at least in my mind, right? So that, the candidate was able to pass certain basic thresholds and get into a good institute and so on. But apart from that, like few things which strike out when I interview candidates and so on is, number one, which I would say, is that today's world has become very, very digital, right? Everybody generally has some kind of social media presence and so on and so forth. So building an active online presence, in my opinion, is something which is very important. 10 years back, people only used to rely on a CV. I think that is important still, but the world is changing, and if you are working on quirky and interesting projects, right, I think it is definitely worth it to put it out there online and build some form of reputation off of it, which will show your skills, right? Not everything can always be conveyed via like a 1-page or 2-page CV, right? And today a lot of good companies would generally do some level of online checks, right? And if you don't have any online presence there, and something positive which you can show, then your chances of getting hired could actually go down, right? So building an active online presence in a constructive manner is actually very important in my opinion. And I think over the next 5 or 10 years, like, the knowledge economy will evolve in this direction. A lot of very successful people actually they put a lot of effort in building that kind of online presence, and then it compounds, like that you start getting benefits out of that as you progress in your career. So that is one. Similarly, the other thing which I would say is, if you're kind of looking to be part of a fast growing startup, work in other fast growing startups, right? It is okay to take a little bit of calculated risks, I would generally like to talk to a candidate who has worked at a other startup like a fast growing startup than somebody who has worked at some big organization, right? Because I myself have worked at big organizations and I know what are the pros and cons of that, right? Of course, the pro is that you're able to build like something impressive on your CV and so on and so forth. But the skill sets that you might learn in a big organization versus what you will learn, as Sudhanshu very rightly said, 2 years in a startup is like 5 or 7 years, in a big organization, right? So so that is something which is how I think you can stand out. And this is one good advice that I received from somebody, like generally if you have a choice, I would say that you should either work at a fast fast growing early stage startup, or you should work at a very blue chip type of company, like one of the big four consultancy firms, or like a FANG type of company, or investment banks or something like that, right? And that do it for calculated like 2 years or 3 years or something like that. But don't my personal feeling is that working in some okayish big company is probably not going to help your career in the long run. It is okay to take those calculated risks and go and work in a fast growing startup if you have that option. So that is one point which how you I think can stand out. Similarly, upskill yourselves. I can talk from a finance point of view. If you are trying to make a career specifically in financial services, like and more specifically in a finance type of function, some of these good courses which are available online might be very helpful. For example, CFA is a good example of that. It is worth the investment. I feel if somebody has done a CFA, it shows to me that they have gone through a certain academic rigor, and they have the core finance concepts in place, and so now they can be trained to kind of do whatever is required to make their career successful. Similarly, on the engineering side, of course, there are a lot of good courses which are available, where I think Antwork team is also doing a phenomenal job over there in exposing people to the right skill sets. These are some of the things I think that you should do. Don't just be like like I'm working in a fast growing startup, so like baki ke time mein I must, like I'll just have a nice time pass karunga. Waise thoda sa you should think long term, like where I want to be next 5 years or 10 years. What are the skills that I need today, invest in today, that will set me up for that success in the future. And investing that 10%, 20% of your time every month in something like this will actually be very helpful in the long run. So that is one thing which I feel people should do. So yeah, these are some of the things which ways in which you can jump the line and try to get noticed. So yeah. Sudhanshu, I think you're on mute.
I was on mute. So we have a couple of questions from the audience. We'll take that. But
sure.
I totally agree with what you just said, right? So the first thing is the personal branding or creating the online presence for yourself. Writing a simple LinkedIn post on things that you feel is relevant to your professional persona. You need not be a Grammy or an expert on that, but your take on an article, your take on an event, that is something that you can definitely share. It will help people understand that you know basics of what you're talking about.
Yes.
Do that at a regular level. And this entire aspect of continuous learning, that is where Antwork, the sole reason why we exist is continuous learning, because we have in our careers that getting a job is not good enough. In fact, getting a job is not enough good to get you the promotion of the next level. So if you have to move from A to B, that step from and it's not just A to B, you have to go from A to B to C, and it's all the way to Z. That journey is a long journey, and you have to prepare yourself with the right skills, and skills, they change.
I mean, it's changing very rapidly, right? Like 10 years back, like investment banking was considered to be like a very fancy, something which everybody used to aspire for. That is honestly not the case today, right? The world has changed. So while we around us, we see that technology is evolving, business models are evolving and so on, the skill sets are also evolving. So if you have X amount of skills today, doesn't mean that is going to be sufficient for you 5 or 10 years down the line. I very clearly remember, 10 years back, what kind of skills people used to look for or aspire for. And today, it's a very different, situation, right? So unless you are, okay to, absorb the change and, be willing to, learn new skills, you will actually run the risk of getting outdated, right? And the knowledge economy is actually evolving very fast. So continuous learning is something which is absolutely very important, in my opinion.
So that first question is from Karan. What are the books you can recommend to me to understand about lending and fintech for a person who's not from a fintech background? And the second is, what core finance skills one from a engineering background should have? So these are the two things that have come.
Sure. So I'll try to answer the second question first. The core technical skills that I think people should have is a lot of the development work which happens is like having a good command over certain specific programming languages. Of course, programming language, you can always learn any kind of new programming languages, but what I've seen is a lot of the development work actually happens through Python. There are a lot of new technologies which are there, frameworks which are there, different stacks which are being used in the market. So if you're proficient in like Django frameworks, or you are able to have skills around React to kind of build applications and so on, that is something which will be very useful. It always helps, Android developers are always in demand, right? So if you can learn those skills, because across the board, people want to develop, build, digital applications or digital interface, right? Most companies generally startups have that requirement. So you'll always find good opportunities within the fintech space also over there. Similarly, when it comes to machine learning, there are a lot of good courses which are available online, which you can do. And if you are in college, I would definitely recommend you to do machine learning courses, because that is something which will definitely help you over time. Generally, what I've seen is the machine learning mein, it is not ki, like it's not as if ki you finance related machine learning koi padhayega. The framework that you learn, like the different frameworks that you learn in a machine learning course, can then be applied to various industries. So even within financial services, then a lot of these frameworks can actually be used. There are courses which people are offering, which you can definitely do. I mean, not to make a kind of plug over here, but like the college where I studied, which is called a Chennai Mathematical Institute, they have a very interesting machine learning program, which is something which if somebody is interested in that, or applied mathematics type of program, they have their entire curriculum also put out on the website. So you can consider doing these kind of courses. Some of these courses are they also offer online, and so you don't even need to actually physically go to the college and kind of do it. You can do it remotely as well. Yeah. I would say that these are some of the things that you should do in order to like upskill yourself from a technical standpoint. So yeah.
So, and to add to Pratish's answer, Kumar, if you want to understand finance skills, I categorize finance for beginners into three fields. One is the entire concept around discounting, or how do you understand the time value of money. If you know that helps. The entire from interest rate to compounding to discounting, NPV and all this thing, that is one bucket. The other is around financial modeling, where if you can, on a basic Excel, if you can make projections and all these things, that is also something very, very important. The third aspect, which is not very core, but it helps is understanding the financial statements, the basic profit and loss statements, and this balance sheets. That is slightly technical, but of course. And what I would like to tell here is that at Antwalk, we are launching a program on P&L ownership, which would be to prepare people for leadership roles inside startups, right? So that is where we are gearing towards, and understanding the basics of finance, the basic of economics that is required, understand the basics of marketing, and also to bring a lot of tech product angles and everything, and how to become that person in a startup who the CEOs and the co-founders can rely upon, and who can be the next generation of leaders in a startup. If you want to be the person, we are launching a program very soon on that. So please stay tuned to Antwalk's website. We of course have programs on digital marketing and data engineering, cybersecurity. So you can definitely take a look at Antwalk, right? The book that Karan talk about, if you have to understand finance, it's slightly it's a technical part. If you want to understand finance from a very layman perspective, I have books like Rich Dad Poor Dad is, I think, always a great recommendation. I recently studied this psychology of money, but I think that doesn't talk a lot about finance. It talks more about from the investing
behavioral aspect of money, how we react.
Yeah.
Correct. It's a very nice book.
If you have to talk about finance, you possibly take a course, right?
So on the finance books, I can actually suggest one or two books. Like if you want to get into core financial services, like not necessarily the kind of stuff that I mentioned, like for example, you want to make a career in investments or trading, this kind of thing. A lot of very, very good high quality books. There is a book written by John C. Hull, which is called as something like I forgot the exact name. It's like like options, futures, and derivatives. ऐसे कुछ नाम है उसका. That like you can just Google the name of the author. Yeah, it's called as John Hull.
I'll mention in the front.
Yeah, it's a very famous book. I remember when I started my career, I studied that book, and Sudhanshu mentioned about time value of money and so on. That is very, very well explained in that book. How interest rates work, how the value of money over time changes, and so on and so forth. So that is something which I would definitely recommend, even for, it's not very technical, but it is not ekdam layman also. It's kind of semi-technical, right? Yeah. So somebody who has some little bit of quantitative background can definitely absorb that book. That is one book which I would recommend you guys to study, like to understand the at least basic concepts in finance.
Okay, nice. So yeah, if we don't have any further questions, we talked a lot about the fintech industry, Pratish's journey. So yeah, for me, it was a very interactive session. It is something that I'm personally really enjoyed it. So I enjoyed the session. I hope everybody else who has attended this session, and it's live on YouTube, people who look forward, they'll benefit from it. So Pratish, thanks a lot for all the knowledge you shared with us.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sudhanshu, Sumit, Joy, like all of you guys, Sriram. Like it's a great pleasure to talk to all of you guys and all the participants who came on the call. Please feel free to if you guys have any want any advice anytime or want to just discuss. Happy to you can reach out to me on social media. And happy to chat one-on-one with you guys as well. And yes, I mean, Antwalk team is definitely doing a great job. I've been in touch with Sumit very regularly, and definitely very interesting sessions that courses which they are doing. So definitely you guys should check it out.
Thank you, Pratish.
Please share your feedback. Link for the session has been shared. Please share your feedback. And it's always, Sumit, of course, has a greater interaction with Pratish, but whatever limited interaction I have had, it's always a pleasure to interact with you. So First of all the best for your journey as a startup co-founder, and I wish you all the best. And for
Sure.
all those who look to make a career in fintech or in the startup culture in general, I hope you got inputs that will help you. So, and all the best to all of you to make a very good career, be successful, be happy in what you're doing. Okay. So with that note, if Sumit has something to add, this is
No,
a
just want to thank Pratish. It's always great interacting with you. It's really, quite a learning session. The way you explained all the things. Thank you so much, Pratish. It was great. And thank you so much for giving your time.
Sure.
It's almost we have crossed over, but the time limit is already been crossed. Thank you so much, Pratish.
Sure. Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.